Edward, I'm just knocked out by your garden. It really is very, very special. And obviously, you are probably best known now for your Edward Bulmer natural paints, although your main career is interior design. And I think your paints are better known than your cider, which was started by your great-grandfather.
It was, yes.
But looking at this amazing place here, so when you first bought this, you saw the house in a sea of daffodils. This amazing formal water garden was just a little rivery bog.
Literally standing here, you couldn't see the house because it was just a willow bed the whole way along.
And how you've transformed it, because when we arrived along that little road there, and I've never seen your house before, and then you see this gap in the hedge, and you've done these wonderful piers with the railing, so you just get a glimpse of this wonderful Queen Anne facade, and that is the first sort of, ooh, what's coming? And then you come up the drive, and you've led us up very cleverly, and I parked round the back, so we haven't got hideous cars in front of the house. They're tucked away, and you see this sort of series of little outbuildings, which is presumably where you do your paint and your work.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
And we're farm buildings, so the house doesn't have lots of kind of estate type buildings. It quickly became a farmhouse. This is really prime farmland. So
Wonderful.
The farm buildings were constantly updated. There's a water mill to bruise oats for the cattle in the winter. It's all about really progressive farming, but 100 and 200 years ago.
Right, but so now you've restored this, so you found the plans of what were here. It was researched by an archaeologist.
Yes, indeed. Weirdly, although as I was explaining, the road in front is a Roman road, no one ever seemed to be bothered enough to stand there and sketch the house. So we have no views of the house ever.
Really?
And the earliest record we found was the tithe map, which is 1842. So a good 140 years after the house was built. But interestingly, what had vanished was shown very clearly on the tithe map. And tithe maps are all about tax collection.
Yeah.
And you can collect taxes from people who've got water, hearths, and boundaries, and buildings.
Hearths?
Hearths in your house. So
Right.
the more hearths you have in your house, the bigger the dog you are.
Right, yes.
The more buildings you have, the more cattle you can shelter through the winter, etc. They're all kind of signs of someone who should be able to afford some tax.
Right, okay. So I love the way, so that it looks, the water really sets the house off. If this wasn't here, it would be a lovely house, but this absolutely elevates it beyond all, doesn't it?
It's amazing. So you get two houses, but also, of course, we get the light reflected off the water into the house.
And people never realise how much water bounces light in. When I look at our pool in our back garden in the winter, it really bounces light off and makes you feel good. I do like your take on the apples and pears in the front. So what made you put those there?
A wedding, if I'm really honest. But when we did the archaeology, we dug it all out. We were able to find exactly where the walls had been.
Yes.
That stone wall actually survived, that one there.
Yes.
And all of the others had originally been wooden, and we found the little stakes. But most exciting,
elm probably, would they?
Yeah,
Elm was what they
there
used.
would have been elm, possibly oak around here, but probably elm.
Yeah.
But most exciting, in the bed of the canal, we found two neat squares of brick dust.
So there was something.
And so we reasoned, or the archaeologists reasoned, that we would have had formal pedestals sticking out of the water, and they are symmetrically placed on the front door.
Yeah.
And actually then there's a channel going that way that was used to drain the canals, all on axis. So it's everything you expect of that phase of kind of formal Dutch gardening.
Yeah. And I like the little twist, like you put the boys there and the blue seat. So you've used this blue. Is this a Bulmer blue?
Actually, it was a blue we mixed up for the National Trust for a dovecote they had.
Yeah.
Not far from you, called Kinwarton.
Don't know it.
Kinwarton dovecote.
Yeah.
It's rather good blue, isn't it?
It's
And
lovely.
I like that. We'll have it on a few benches. And we change to time to time.
Because blue is a difficult colour in the garden, I think, because when you see it in Majorelle in Morocco and places, in the bright sunlight, it looks amazing. But if you put that bright Majorelle blue in England, on a dull day, it makes
doesn't really
everything
work.
look so flat
I
beside
think this has got enough solidity to it. The one over there is much more tasteful, you know, it's sort of more a greeny blue.
Which one?
There's one on there. We built
Oh,
these
there,
little
on your little bridge.
footbridges, yeah.
So you designed that little bridge, obviously.
Yes, we made those for the wedding.
Oh, this wedding, obviously the whole garden's
Originally,
transmorphed.
this would have been a series of 3 fish ponds,
Right.
dammed from each other, and that allowed you to keep different types of fish. So, for instance, pike.
So it'd be like a stew pond, producing fish
Exactly,
for
exactly
the house,
that, exactly
as they did. Yeah.
exactly that. And then they would have been opened up when the watermill was built, we think in the early 19th century.
Very
So
clever.
now it's a
Very
continuous
clever.
mill pond.
And you presumably put the topiary along there, and your peacock. I've got to ask you, where did you find him?
Well, lots of places have kind of temporary sculpture exhibitions, don't they, in gardens? And we picked that up at one of them where the artist, whose name I'm going to forget, I think it was Williams Ellis was the surname.
Yeah.
She looked at us as she was trying to get it into the van and said, I've taken this to 3 of these now, I do wish someone would buy it. And we said, well, how much? And he said, well, you could have it for. So
I do think that is beautiful. I do think your arrangement of sculpture, your positioning of the topiary, your hydrangeas and everything along the front, it's just perfection, isn't it? Who is allowed to drive in that front drive? Proper guests, not the hoi polloi like me.
Well, we could have opened. I'm sorry, we had neglected to open the
I don't like.
gates
I
for you.
don't like
We
putting
could
my
have
old
done.
banger outside the front of
It's quite
lovely
nice
house.
not to have cars. It
It's
doesn't
lovely.
look better with a car in front of it. It
it
looked
is.
quite good with an Aston Martin DB5 for the wedding.
No,
but
I'd rather have no cars any day. Anyway, show me your little garden at the back.
surely. So from the end of the pond here,
So that's one you have not restored.
it was an inundation in the ground, so it's
Right.
filled naturally.
Yes.
We call it the dark pond because it's surrounded by
dark
vegetation. It's got gunner at the far
Yeah.
end. And from there, through this pond and the middle pond and the end of the long pond, I calculated was 100 yards shorter than the Great Canal at Chatsworth.
Woo!
So that's why did he do it?
Well, he was a doctor, and I do think a lot of my clients are medics, and I do think a lot of doctors are excellent gardeners. It's weird because you think of them being so scientific and bodily orientated, but I think when they get outside, they just go bonkers and they love it. I think they're brilliant, a lot of them. But the reflection works equally well from here.
It's great, isn't it? And
And-
what's interesting too is that these 2 fronts of the house are different to all the other fronts. They've got
So it's got
these.
4 fronts.
It's got 4 fronts, but
Woo,
these
that's
have
unusual.
got the polite fronts
Yes.
reflected in the water,
Right.
visible from the main road. as it were.
Right,
It's
right.
all, you know, but the house was L-shaped originally.
Right.
And
And
then
I
it's
love
been-
the way you've got your little bridge, and then you've got another bridge above a waterfall, and then that is another seat at the end, isn't it?
It is.
And then within that, you've got the side there, that face there, with a beautiful lead man. Is that one that you designed?
we bought it in the village.
Oh, really?
It's a green, you know,
Green man.
Green man.
Yeah, yeah.
And we just put a tongue in there and a water supply, and it's an old Georgian lead system.
Glad to
that
see
he
you've got
spouts
my
into.
friend there, the Husqvarna. They are invaluable, aren't they? Yes. Right, let's
robot.
pop on and see the
Yeah.
next exciting bit.
So, and this might be a surprise to you, the river is right here, quite swelled by the recent rains.
So your river is racing by. I measured our rainfall 2 days ago, and we had 15 gallons per square foot, thread yard. Massive amount of water. You must have had similar by the look of your friend there.
Yeah, and it's quite coloured, isn't it?
Do you swim in any of them?
Yeah, but because we have 2 weirs upstream,
Yes.
one to flood the ponds here and the other to flood the meadows around. There's a nice pool between them. that
Oh,
we tend to
lovely.
swim.
Yeah.
The summer level can be quite low, you're paddling really. Having restored all of this water, we realised why the end of that building was in brick and not stone like the rest of it, and looking a little bit ornamental, because of course you now see it reflected. And B, we thought, what do we do with all this straight line stuff in an otherwise natural river landscape? So that's why we introduced the yews and the formal planting and the hornbeam that way.
Yes.
But otherwise, we kind of left it at that because
That's
this
all
is
it needs.
already
It's all
a
it
lot
needs.
to manage.
Yeah.
You know, my poor mother, she can't really look after anymore. So she is preparing the hellebores for winter by the look of it.
Edward, I can see the way you've done piers. You're a big pier boy, aren't you? What I like there is the way you've got these whacking great urns, tall piers, and then these wee little gates. But
Yeah.
it's a mucking around with scale.
Yeah. But have you ever been to Hampstead Marshall, where all that survives is the piers and the house is gone?
No,
You
what are
must.
they like?
It's
I love
near,
piers.
It's Berkshire. It's not much of a detour off the motorway.
Yeah.
Go and have a look. You'll be amazed. And these socking great.
Yes.
And they just look amazing.
Yeah, I
And
do.
They're costs from old ones. You know, they're not. It's not me that's kind of scaled anything up.
Yeah.
I bought them from that lovely Twig her in Tetbury.
Tetbury.
Twig. She has amazing garden.
So
ornaments.
the finials are cast.
I think so. But I think they were cast from an original.
From
of
an
the right-
original.
the
Yeah.
right period.
Yeah. No, it's lovely. And everywhere your cyclamens are doing
Yeah.
so well.
We
aren't
really
they?
worried about them, but they've enjoyed this year. They've colonised quite well.
They're spread by ants, aren't they?
Is
The
that true?
seeds, yeah.
I didn't know
And
that.
they just,
How
they,
interesting.
I think they sort of eat something on them. They fold down and then they spread them around and they colonise quite big areas.
Because we had all this drained through the summer, so this was dry, and they colonised the bed of the canal
Really?
in that short time. I was
Really?
very surprised.
That's fascinating.
yeah.
Edward, again, you've gone bonkers with your scale. Where did you find these crackers?
So we bought them in Udaipur. We took our girls out of school and went travelling in India.
Yes.
And I'm not actually that drawn to much kind of Indian stuff to bring it over as a sort of ethnic happening. I was very aware that it needed to have a kind of sense of a European tradition to work in an English garden. And these, I think, have got enough of the sort of shape that you expect from kind of classically informed stuff to work. And yeah, I admit, we never expected them to make it back. We thought, well, let's give it a go. And they came.
Yeah.
Very flimsy boxes, and we got them over with the telly hoist, put them on some chillstone urns, and then gave them some context. So I call this little bit, this sort of amphitheatre, I call it a theatre. One day I shall have a proscenium arch and a floating stage, and we'll do commedia dell'arte and outdoor opera.
Wow.
But we're just still at the stage where we're trying to shape the yew and make this. So I love.
You planted this yew?
Yeah, I love.
And what
topaz.
size did you plant it and how long ago?
Oh, just little things like
Yeah.
that.
And how long ago?
Probably it's around 1997, that sort of thing. So
and-
actually, we planted them before we bought the urns,
Yeah. No.
and then that's our little pet cemetery in there.
Oh, and so when you said you're worried about bringing Indian things over, but I think sometimes in a garden you can go a bit wild. I don't think you have to be
Yeah, you can.
slavish, and that's why I think they're a bit of a shock. They're a lovely shock, a surprise element.
Well, I love the shape of them, and like
Yeah.
you, I love the scale of them. And I asked them to make the lids because obviously in our climate you can't afford for them to fill up with water and then freeze in the.
Very good
in the
point.
winter,
Very good point.
so-
And what stone is that?
Well, it's a white marble of some sort.
Right, and it's durable.
Yeah, it's durable. I do clean them sometimes. I oscillate between wanting the weathered look and thinking actually bright white marble is quite fun against the dark background.
So there's what could be a total non-event, couldn't it? Just down the side of a beautiful wall, albeit in a beautiful bit of water. You've actually widened out the space and made it a happening space.
Make that happening. Yeah, exactly.
Right, now for the next bit of treat, please. Edward, I cannot believe the sheer size and scale of
It's
this.
amazing, isn't it?
So you planted the
So we
hornbeam,
put the hornbeam because otherwise it's just a sort of strip of water in the middle of a field kind
and
of thing.
here's your elm. This was the original elm planting, is it? Yeah.
It's giving way now. We'll
Wow.
probably have to replace it.
And
And then we've just built the end wall so that we can control the water a bit better when we want to drain the ponds out, because we've realised we're often told that Capability Brown swept everyone up in his great new fashionable ideas. I suspect that anyone who had water gardens like this was jolly ready for someone to come and say, you don't need to have all this formality anymore, because it's an enormous amount of upkeep.
Well, the size of it. But you cut those with a flail, do you, presumably?
With
tractor-mounted flail?
No. We do it by hand with
Really?
electric. We try to be a carbon neutral site.
But I'm thinking of time. It's just that the hornbeam hedge down my drive, so a tractor with a flail actually does a really good job if it's level ground.
Yeah.
And it takes him half an hour. And if I do it with my electric still, it takes me all day to do it and clear it up.
Whereas the clearing up takes a long time. You have that either way, don't you?
No,
if you
the
take heavy
flail-
stuff on these banks, this is
They
why
would
these
erode.
banks
You think
are
they'd erode?
bulging. Yeah.
Right, okay,
But
bad
also
idea,
too,
bad idea.
you know, I'm trying to get them a little bit more formal. You know how when you know you tend to sort of somehow lean backwards and you lose the verticality.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think we've got the arches too low, so I'm raising them. We haven't yet, but I will raise them 2 feet. So
Yeah.
it's just experimenting.
It's
just
the
do it as we
height
go along.
though, isn't it? Because the height of that is 5 metres?
I would say. I mean, we can reach it off the back of a pickup, you know, with a long-handled thing with a right
Oh right, you
angle.
don't even use a toe picker?
We did, but it's a waste of time, really.
Really?
Yeah. I've got a scaffold tower, which I just put some big wheels on.
And you think if you lowered it by 2 metres, which would make the job easier, you
Yeah.
wouldn't have the drama? No.
I don't know. It's not
You-
a bad
God,
idea. I'll give it some thought.
You are a drama king, aren't you? You really are.
To be honest, we just plant and see what happens. So most people would have put in an iron structure and trained the things to it.
No, I don't think
We
they
just
would.
bought hedging plants and stuck them in.
I don't think they would, because I with mine at home, I did put in metal structures, and subsequently on other ones we've just put them in and used canes if we need to pull it
Yeah,
across.
yeah, we
And
use
unless
canes.
you're on a really windy site, I don't think it's necessary, and it's much easier without iron.
Well, we planted this size, so they've had plenty of time to get their roots down.
Lovely.
And they're quite unruly, aren't they?
Well,
That's
they
what
do.
I
In
love.
a summer like this, they'd grow non-stop. You know, it's not cutting it once, which normally I'd cut them in July and maybe trim them up a bit for winter. But this year, I've done them twice.
And I think, I love the yew, but I think yew is firmly a garden plant as topiary. But I feel these do help us lead into the wider landscape better, and you get 2 colours because you get the winter and the summer,
Yeah.
summer foliage.
Show me the next little surprise.
So yeah, so the idea was this is architecture in leaf, isn't it? So it's an arcade that you can walk the length of. And when I first laid them out, I put 1 row there and 1 row there, and a wonderful client I had said, "Oh, very well, Edward, but you need double leaf." So we put another row here, and then it took me a long time to realise, of course, I needed another row there,
Yeah.
because this forms the lovely thing about the view from the end of the canal is lovely. And what's great is that it completely misses the house. It's just sort of zeb.
Yes.
It's not sort of affected in that we expect everything to line up. It just does its thing and whistles past the house. And now we've tripped up the back of the house more than it was originally. So we've used the arcade idea to form a kind of avenue that centres on the house as well.
And with this, when you cleaned out the water, you've got a mount. So you've made
Exactly.
a viewing
Exactly.
platform over the top,
Exactly.
which you mow, it looks like.
Yeah, we've done a ziggurat up one of them,
Yes.
and it's got a willow pavilion on the top of it.
Goodness me.
We used to have grazing, we used to have sheep. This year we've meadowed it.
And then all the tents from the wedding. So
The
what
tents are from
went
the
on
wedding.
in here?
Sleep,
Right, sleep. This is accommodation.
they
We think it was
dance
sleep.
like you'd never seen it. We
Yeah.
had the most brilliant band. The floor was going up and down like this. And I
Wow.
never saw, once the music started, I didn't see anyone sitting at tables like you do often.
Really?
Everyone was on the dance floor whole night. So they're all
Good.
knackered. I think they genuinely went to sleep.
Oh, wow. I have to say, are you a frustrated landscape architect?
Yes,
You are, aren't you?
yes.
So
am.
maybe you just do
But
both.
actually what's really firing me up now is the regeneration work we're doing. Unbelievable what happens if you give nature a chance, isn't it?
Oh, rewilding bits of it or
I
whatever.
don't
When
call
you-
it rewilding.
No,
I mean, we've got an old area of family land which you can't really call a farm, but we are taking hay, and
Yeah.
there's 100 acres of woodland. And what has happened, we've been doing scrapes and things recently, and the bounce back from nature is uncanny. How do they know that you've just created some lovely habitat? But they do, and everyone comes.
Edward, this is your walled garden. And what I like about this walled garden is normally they're sort of 6 acres, aren't they? They're massive, but this is a beautiful scale. You've broken up the walls, obviously with your yew buttresses that you've made, oh God, worthy of Highgrove, aren't they? The way you've put these elevated topiary from them. But I think probably what is most interesting to me is the way that you've extended your outdoor living space with this temporary structure. And just tell me a bit about how you do that.
Well, it goes up just for the summer.
Yes, so
And it's very interesting. All it is a sheet, isn't it, on poles? It's quite well
it's
engineered.
canvas. It's not
canvas, exactly.
Yeah, so
and it's well. It's actually got a metal pole, so it withstands the wind, and it just draws you out. Even on a dull day, suddenly we've got some sun. But so now it's shade, which is quite welcome.
yes.
But you can sit out here. It starts raining, doesn't matter. And you wouldn't do that without that sense of being covered. But because there's nothing on the sides of it, you're just sitting in the garden, aren't you? You just look out into the garden. But we've furnished it like you would a room. You know,
Yes.
it's sofas and a coffee table. It's sort of mad, but also, and it's kind of smokers' land and all of that. You know, for those that still do that, silly them.
And also, I think the way that the shed that's there is charming, isn't it? Because it's totally shambolic looking in compared to everything else.
Sorry about that.
But I think it looks lovely. Doesn't
well,
it?
it's the woodshed. So until I've thought of a better idea, and the kennel at the far end of it, and it was always there.
Yeah.
And we effectively turned the house round because the west aspect is so much nicer than the east aspect in terms of sort of being outside. So we actually formalised this side of the house, and we built these walls, and we took down a wing that came this way and pushed one going that way, so that this is actually secure.
So this is your wall garden, which normally is heaving with vegetables, but because of the wedding, you've gone over to dahlias, And what inspires me about this space is that all your little details, like your post with the finials on top, which I always love, and the way you've done the fruit cage. And you had 2 of them, but you said there's too much fruit, you've converted one to poly.
Yeah.
That's such a nice idea. What a wonderful looking polythene tunnel. And I love also everywhere where you've got big piers, sometimes you've got wee vases on the top. You've gone the other way with your scale. You're always mucking around with scale, aren't you? And also your paint colour.
Mucking around.
Yes, your paint. It's fun, isn't it? It's what it's all about.
I've got a thing about gates too. Whenever I see gates that attract me and they look quite well priced, I seem to buy them.
Yeah.
And I must have this thing about having a gated community or something, mustn't I?
Well,
eventually I just have to build some piers to hang the gates.
Yeah, well, you see these, you can see through them, and they emphasise, they're like frames, aren't they? Picture frames, really, in your garden, I think. Lovely.
I don't think that one's very old, that one, but it's very nice to see through to Ganesh, to wish us prosperity and all things good.
So this is where everybody parks. And this is a lockdown project, who made this?
So my daughter's boyfriend Fergus made this, and he just looked round all the sheds. You can see there are old buckets, there's wash pots, there's mash tins. That's a bit of an irrigation pipe from the watermill. That's a header tank from the house. And I was going to paint it all kind of amazingly, but actually just rather like it in its unadorned state. And our challenge really is to see if we can get a bit more water coming through there, so that all of the tubs have water cascading over them. But
I think it's really fun. Lovely courtyard, isn't it?
and it's an extraordinary time that we're all going to remember every now and again, aren't we? What happened during lockdown?
Yeah. And your lantern design, you did those?
Yeah.
They're nice, aren't they? Very clever. So they're wooden with a metal.
Just wooden surrounds with interior wall lanterns inside them. So
Really
the wooden
nice.
surrounds are just protecting them.
Yeah, lovely. And the final space. So your rose garden, lovely, isn't it? So this we are facing.
Well, you can see the sun goes around like this. So this is pretty much full south.
Yes.
So we spend a lot of time in that part of the kitchen, you know, having meals, often working or what have you. So it's nice to have something to look at and to smell, of course, you know, when it's warm enough to have the doors open.
Your acid anthers look wonderful.
They're happy, aren't they?
And your horseshoe obelisks.
Yes.
By the same guy that did the apple and pear, or not?
I can't tell you.
You can't,
Because
okay.
I'm stupid. But they're by the same guy that did some at Highgrove,
Right.
showing off.
Yeah.
We actually bought them in London, but I was attracted to them because when we bought the house, the main base course has lots of horseshoes on it that have just been picked up in the fields and what have you. And they show all sorts of size of hoof. So some of them are from working horses.
So when you
and
say
stuff.
the base course, you mean on the...
Around the house, yeah.
Oh, really?
That bottom string course.
Oh, right.
And I just thought, well, there's a tradition of collecting horseshoes around here, and that
Yeah.
was just rather nice
Lovely.
kind of output. And then, yeah, Emma found this guy, Josh, who makes apples and pears and fruit and things. And obviously apple is quite in our kind of family DNA.
Just a bit.
So
Yes.
she bought those, and we had them on some piers into the orchard. And then when we installed the plinths just now, we thought we had to have something on them. I guess they would have had figures of, I don't know, Neptune or
Possibly.
you know, emblematic figures originally in lead, probably.
No,
But anyway, they work for now.
it's totally charming. I think you've been inspirational, what you've done. You're obviously really as passionate about your garden, I think, as it's about your paint and your interiors. I mean, your interior is to die for, obviously, but we've just seen the outside. But, well, it's amazing. Thank you very much
Well,
indeed.
it's been lovely to have you here, and thank you for coming this way, because you made a comment earlier about David Hicks getting Americans over. And we have had Americans over, but we find it very difficult to get English people here because we're so far away.
You need to be
But
on the
you've
map.
made the journey,
You need
thank
to
you.
be on the map. It's definitely worth coming to see. Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we do open to, as you said, we do open to visitors. And we love that. And I give a tour and Emma cooks lunch. That's how we like to do it. You know, that you're coming to our
Yeah,
home.
very nice. What a lovely day. Thank you.